There are two aspects of law. One is that law sets the standard by which we are expected to behave. But the other side of it is that there must be consequences when you break the law. So in Exodus chapter 20, we have the 10 Commandments given. And in the following chapters, he discusses the consequences of breaking those commandments. We continue then reading in Exodus chapter 22 from verse 16. If a man entices a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall surely pay the bride price for her to be his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money according to the bride price of virgins. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who sacrifices to any god, except to the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. You shall neither mistreat a stranger, nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict them in any way, and they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will become hot, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like a money lender to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbour's garment as a pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down, for that is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. What will he sleep in? And it will be that when he cries to me, I will hear, for I am gracious. You shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people. You shall not delay to offer the first of your ripe produce and your juices. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. Likewise you shall do with your oxen and your sheep. It shall be with its mother 7 days. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. And you shall be holy men to me. You shall not eat meat torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together these verses 16 to 31 from Exodus chapter 22. The first matter addressed here is that of a man enticing a virgin who is not betrothed. So she's not married, she's single. He entices her and he lies with her. The basic command is he must take her as his wife and pay the full bride price. He has enticed her, he has drawn her to himself, he must follow through with that. Unless, of course, the father utterly refuses, and that is the father's right, in which case he must still pay, but he does not get the woman. And so it is much better to negotiate with the father in the first place, rather than try and go behind his back. For the commandment was, you shall not commit adultery. And this law is aimed at maintaining a very high standard of family fidelity in the nation. For strong marriages are fundamental to a strong society. For this reason, verse 19 says, whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. Lying with an animal is making a mockery of marriage and the sexual union that God designed to be part of marriage. This matter is so serious for the well-being of society that the death penalty is imposed. And then we have 2 verses that relate to the commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. The first is, you shall not permit a sorceress to live. And the other, he who sacrifices to any god, except to the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. A sorceress looks to demons for guidance. But if we are God's people, we must look to God for guidance. And who is the God that we worship? The nation of Israel had entered into a contract with the Lord God to be his people. And so if they turned away and worshipped another God, they were repudiating that contract and would be judged. In the nation of Israel, both of these actions brought the death penalty because the person involved was turning away from God and would lead society away from God. Whoever sacrifices to any god except to the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. And then you shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. The law envisages that there will be people coming to live in the nation of Israel who will be seeking the God of Israel, and they are to be received as equal citizens. There's not to be any attitude that because they are not of Jewish heritage, they are inferior. They are not to be mistreated or oppressed. Similarly, you are not to afflict any widow or fatherless child. God is concerned very much for the poor. The plan is for strong marriages because they provide for women and children. But if the husband and father dies, then the society must pick up the slack and care for the widows and children. This is what James says at the end of chapter 1. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. One attitude would be to say, well, they've done something wrong, we must increase their punishment. But no, God says you shall not afflict those in any way, because if they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry. When people are oppressed and call out to God, then God will act on their behalf against you. My wrath shall become hot. I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. In other words, your enemies will come against you. When you start exploiting people, then judgment will come from outside upon you. If you do not defend those in need, the Lord will not defend you. Poor people, we need to care for them, and that often means lending them money. But you are not to lend them money as a money lender does. Our society reverses this completely. If you're very rich, you can borrow money at a very low interest rate. But if you have no resources, then you get charged very high interest rates. This moneylender attitude is not for God's people. They were to provide the needs of the poor among them, not charging interest. If God has given you something, He's given it for you to use for His glory, which may mean lending it, not for your own gain through interest, but for the well-being of those to whom you lend it. And if you take a pledge of a garment, so a person is so poor that all they have is the coat on their back, then you can take the pledge, but give it back to them before nightfall, because you know they need it. For a blanket at night. If a person is in great distress and calls upon the Lord, He is gracious, and He will hear their cry. He will act for them against you. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain was the commandment. And so here you shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people, because God has appointed the rulers of the people to care for the people. And the final proposition in this section is that we must acknowledge God with our income. You shall not delay to offer the first of your ripe produce and your juices. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me, the firstborn of your oxen and your sheep. Let the lamb stay 7 days with its mother, and on the 8th day give it to the Lord. And generally you are to be clean. You shall be holy men to me. Therefore don't eat meat from animals that die in the field. You can feed that to the dogs, but you don't eat it yourself. Be holy men to me.